All right, we're live, so whenever you're ready.
Here we are at Resolve Radio.
Whatever.
Whatever we call ourselves.
It doesn't matter. Whatever it's listed as on Spotify, that's what we are.
And as we were thinking of our next guest, we came up with a great idea. My physical therapist who helped me to get back into great health and movement after shoulder surgery. I had rotator cuff surgery and bicep tendinosis, I think it's called.
Yep.
And Brian helped me get back to where I am today, and I feel really great. We're really proud to have him on the podcast today.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
you're definitely going to have to come a little closer to that.
Thanks for having me.
So we want you to start off and give us a little bit about yourself and about your background.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Byron Kokulak. Doctor of Physical Therapy, board certified in orthopedics. I've been working in sports and orthopedic rehab for 8 years now. I'm also an adjunct professor at DPT program as well, teach kinesiology and adult orthopedics. So I love teaching. I host students all the time as well in clinic, kind of helping that next generation come through.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit about like what made me want to get into being a PT were just sports injuries growing up, got exposed to it. And then finally when I got into college, I was actually undeclared, got into an anatomy class, and from there I was hooked when we started doing like dissection and seeing all the different levels. Got hooked on that class, actually ended up being a TA for anatomy. From there just moved into the pre-PT and followed the whole path.
What kind of sports did you play that you were dealing with injuries?
Growing up, soccer. I did like a multi-sport. My big sports soccer, track and field, did pentathlon and decathlon, and then basketball as well until I stopped growing vertically. So I switched over to track full time.
I didn't even realize that. What did you run?
I did pentathlon and decathlon. So everything, yeah. I was never the top at anything. It was always like, it was a 2 or 3. But
Still,
when you
that's
do
great.
those multi-events, then I'd score our team some points on working through, the pentathlon.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What was your favorite sport that you did?
Oh, soccer.
Okay.
Still play.
What were you the best at?
Soccer.
Okay.
Yep.
What position were you?
Outside wing, and then I moved into outside back for defense. I'm definitely more of a defensive minded, but still play to this day, and I've actually worked more around midfield, striker up top, so kind of all over.
Cool.
Yeah.
You play in like a men's league?
The most competitive, organized pickup you'll ever see.
Okay. All right.
That's the best way I can describe it. We track statistics. We meet every Saturday. It's kind of like the same group. So it's clean. I don't have any risk of guys coming in and slide tackle. And I see it too often in the clinic where, someone who's my age comes in, I got slide tackled in a soccer game and I tore my ACL. I'm like, I can't tolerate that. So we got a clean group. So we get some good fitness in
And you're just getting over an injury, right?
I did, yeah. As much as I talk about it is some clean play. There are some collisions. Yeah, I just got through an ankle surgery myself, but back to playing. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, well, while we're on that, let's talk about what your workout routine looks like. So we know you play soccer, you're active with that, but what else do you do to supplement that?
So with a 2.5-year-old at home, that's certainly got a little impacted lately. But yeah, soccer's a ritual. We play Saturdays for about 2 hours in total. And then I'll try to supplement during the week with a couple workouts. And they'll be more full body. I'll try to incorporate like an upper and lower just kind of all together. More some compound movements just because I know I got to string together at least a good half hour, 45 minutes. And, if it's limited, this is what I want to get in and just work to maintain everything. So, can stay in sports, stay on the field. And then even just keep working healthy, so everything I can do at work, it's low demand. I'm physically, fit and qualified to do everything I needed to do.
So we're predominantly talking strength training.
Yes.
Okay. No conditioning other than soccer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No EMOMs or AMRAPs or Metcons?
Nope.
Okay.
Workout routine will be show up, dynamic warm up, some kind of mobility, foam rolling, some kind of mobility, dynamic warm up, and then move into maybe some biking or cycling.
Okay.
Or I'll supplement that in the end as well if I want to go through more of a strength compounds and do some more strength movements, I'll save that accessory work and kind of that cardio for like the end.
Gotcha. Now, since you kind of just segued beautifully into it, what is your opinion on CrossFit?
CrossFit's great. Yeah, it's been around for a couple decades now. Super popular.
Keeps you in business.
Yeah, it does help. But no, it's been super popular, especially over the last decade,
right.
10, 15 years specifically. Especially as like competitions opened up with like CrossFit Opens. But no, great sport, awesome camaraderie. The gym communities that we see across like, from multiple gyms that I know of. Everyone always just has an awesome like support system.
Yeah. And you also have MMA athletes there too.
See
right?
a lot of UFC, MMA athletes. That's probably the biggest population. CrossFit's right there with us, and CrossFit athletes. Even just even just active adults that can work for CrossFit. Soccer and football athletes. They're probably the biggest. That's probably the biggest group.
Football.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe because a lot of them are
too much
in-house.
Too much contact.
Too much contact.
Yeah.
So what is it about, let's speak about CrossFit, since that's Deb and I's background, and we know throughout the years it's kind of gotten a bad rap here and there. But what is it about CrossFit that there is such a heavy population going into PT for it?
As with a lot of other workout regimens, it's sometimes people just ramp up too much too fast. So you might get someone who's an active adult kind of just getting back into working out for the first time in a couple of years. I see kind of those weekend warriors pretty often. Or even just some people that are just looking for a change of a different routine. They just want to do something new. And sometimes it's just, they start doing the classes and it's can be a little too much too quick. And that's where we start seeing some overload, overuse injuries, more tendinitis, tendinopathies, aches in here, stuff here and there. And a lot of that stuff usually starts creeping in around 3 weeks.
Okay.
So once you start getting back going, so it's a good idea to keep an eye on yourself around that 3-4 month mark, because that's when neuromuscular, you've been training, and now you're starting to into some more like muscle hypertrophy, some different changes. And if that accessory work, if the mobility demands aren't there, the small stabilizer muscles aren't up to speed to do those demands, that's where someone finds their way to our clinic.
Right. So other than tendinitis, because we've all been there and had various versions of tennis elbow and golfer's elbow, what is some of the more common injuries that you see from CrossFit?
More common injuries seen from CrossFit are shoulder injuries, knee injuries, back and wrist are probably the top. A lot of tendinopathies, shoulder strains, bicep issues, either tendinopathy or bicep tears I've seen as well. Rotator cuff tears,
Right. Yeah. We have one at the table.
Yes. And then, segueing down into the knee, more anterior knee pain can be classified as more of like patellofemoral pain, where it's a little non-specific, but it's, or patellar tendinopathy, some meniscus issues here and there. Wrist, you usually see sprains from more of the more complex movements. They just don't get caught. Someone's trying to catch the barbell on the way down and just things get cranked back.
Right.
And then low back, usually disc issues. Rarely are they actually like low back strains. They're usually more of a disc issue, even locally, without having anything like radicular going down into the leg. Usually treating them with more of a extension, like McKenzie protocol. Things usually clean up pretty quick.
So it could be more than just, like I guess I used to think that things like very repetitive and lots of repeated things like pull-ups, butterfly pull-ups, things like that would bring an injury, but it could be weight done, I think at a very heavy weight overhead done for time, things like that probably are going to bring on an injury.
Yeah.
Because I guess it could be a combination of them too, because there's so many workouts that have those two things, a lot of repetitions, a lot of kipping and things like that.
And then when you get into like some of the AMRAPs, that's where usually some people burn out and fatigue sets in, form declines, and things start to break down. And that's always it's very often it's that my last rep on my last pull, and very often that's one of the things we hear. Or I showed up to class and I just jumped right in and something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the two more things. So
I think
two biggest things.
In your opinion, this is solely your opinion, not necessarily what may be true or not. Is it the methodology that is the problem, or is it the individual, or is it, of course, it's probably a combination of both, but is it uninformed people going in with the wrong misconception of CrossFit and doing too much too fast, or are there some flaws in the methodology that open the door for people to become injured?
I wouldn't say there's necessarily flaws, but maybe those newcomers to the sport and to the workout routine, they might start benefiting from more of a routine standard screening process as well. Not only having like an in-house PT or someone on staff, sometimes people link up with gyms, but from a coaching standpoint as well, looking at shoulder mobility, looking at hip mobility, things like that to see like, is this person appropriate to load? Is there anything we need to know about in advance? But then, again, if someone's not in-house, you can team up with a good sports PT that's, knows these athletes, and you kind of work together, and you can, just like as we work together, hey, Deb's loading back up into these kind of moves. We can modify doing X, Y, Z, or doing a screen on you as like an initial person. We can look at and say her right ankle has a lot more limited mobility due to this previous fracture that was there that no one would have ever known about, because you don't get that medical screening in like that kind of gym setting. And then it can be incorporated. You need to work on the ankle mobility. You need to keep an eye on this so that things like up the chain, like knee issues don't start, or hip issues don't start creeping in because of that, as that person kind of starts moving in.
Right. But wouldn't you say that in your experience, most people, they don't care for all of that in the beginning because they don't see it as important until it's too little too late and some kind of injury happens? So, I mean, if you had to give advice to people like to take that a little bit more seriously, what would you say to them? How do you get people to buy into the whole theory of, you need to check on your mobility before you handle certain movements and do certain things?
Sure. That screening process upon like entry can start to be mandatory, where it's, and on your first class, you meet up with so-and-so and they're doing a screen on you. So you can start making it mandatory. But we could, repeat the question.
How do you get people to buy into the whole theory of like movement pattern, making sure your mobility, all that is sound and ready to go before tackling, say, a squat snatch or an overhead squat? Like, how do you get them to buy in that the way you move is more important than the movement itself, essentially?
Got it. Also relay some success stories where you've had and how we've helped find people, work through current issues or stopped, we can prevent issues from coming up. So I think leading them into success stories and how we've helped some other people can be beneficial. Like I said before, like kind of start making some of these screens mandatory. And also just relaying it to them that it's not just a movement screen. It's going to help your performance, because if you can work on a little bit more hip mobility on this right side that's limited, you can start getting into deeper squats. You'll start getting more glute max strength development. So now your lifts start going up. So when you get into like more of a performance aspect as well, and relaying to them like when they get into sport and their performance is improving, that's when it's like really fun.
Right. Okay. How important is the general warm up at the beginning?
Oh, absolutely important. It has to be done. You can't show up and just jump in. I personally won't even touch a ball when I get to the soccer field without doing movement preps, and I'll kind of break it down into a few different layers, where do some kind of soft tissue release, either foam roll and lacrosse ball, kind of working on some tighter areas that day. Some more dynamic moves, static stretching, limit it, but it can be done. Start doing some activation drills, depending on what that has that in that warm up or what's in that workout that day. And then some kind of movement pattern as well. So you start prepping it kind of in that 4-way system. And it'll prime the body. Your body's warmed up. You will have increased circulation to the areas. Your heart rate's slightly elevated. You're mentally starting to prepare for these workouts and these lifts that are complex and need to be fully focused.
So static stretching, you said limit that. Is that something? I feel like there's a lot of debate about whether that or not you should do static stretching before or after or not at all. How long should you hold it? Like, I know there's a thing, ROMWAD that we used to do. Literally, you'd hold a pigeon for 3 minutes on each side, and it was torture. But I've had other people in your field or in chiropractic and stuff say that's not necessary. What's your opinion on that?
And was that done before or after workouts?
Actually, probably not even around the workout. It was like in the evening.
Oh, okay. So kind of off-site.
Yeah.
Okay. No, static stretching, if you have an area that, let's say you have a calf tight, you just have chronic calf tightness. Some people just have tighter ankles, no problem. Then you want to get up there, and after your dynamic warm-ups, start doing some static stretching, but probably limit it to 30 seconds. That's it. Just cap it there.
Okay.
So hit a couple areas for static stretching at 30 seconds, cap it off, but you will benefit from more full body dynamic movements. Absolutely. Things like walking scoops or Frankenstein kicks or side lunges. There's a whole, I can put a whole list together.
Yeah.
Static stretching, I'm going to recommend sticking that for post-workout.
Okay.
So work into your cool down. After, that's where you want to do some more static stretching. So again, where now tissue has circulation, it's been loaded, it's well, ready to become work through like a lengthened process. And then if you hold 1 to 2 minutes, that's where like the muscle spindles and everything starts to physiologically relax. You will now start promoting some more long-term muscle length.
Okay.
I heard that, correct me if I'm wrong, that 5 minutes for the duration of a week in a specific stretch or pose is the most effective minimum dose to create mobility gains.
Sure. Yeah. That's if you could probably cap that out and put a overall number on it to start inducing those changes. Yeah, that might work as well. And
is it just as effective if, say, you microdose it throughout the week, like say 30-second holds versus doing a minute here, a minute there? What is there even a right way to do it, like a most efficient way? Because that's what we're all about, is the most efficient way.
Sure. I'll use me as an example. I have tighter calves, soccer player, a lot of running, a lot of kicking, a lot of plantar flexion. Pre-workout, it's foam rolling, my dynamic warm-up. I might do a calf and soleus stretch. Again, cap it at 30 seconds, but post-playing, I'm leaning against that bulk goal post, and I'm doing each gastroc stretch for like a minute hold.
Okay.
And again, that helps me then lead into like, in reducing like muscle soreness and a lot of those other physiologic effects. So next day, I'm ready to go again.
Okay.
And then you mentioned it, but how important is a cool down? Because I've never done a cool down in my life. My cool down is walking out of the gym.
Organized sports, they do them though.
But I can understand, like, a lot of people would probably put the warm up in front of the cool down in line of hierarchy of importance. But in your opinion, the professional's opinion, how important is a cool down?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look across professional sports. You don't see those athletes leaving the field before doing it, right? Because they're prepping their body. They're going back to the training. They're going back to sport the next day. And so are you. So we got to kind of, you can take that like anecdotally, like look at what they're doing and bring it in. But no, cool down, physiologically has some effects where, it's going to lower your heart rate back down, get your blood pressure back down. 1 hour post exercise is when like lactic acid's truly present in your bloodstream. So even just micro circulating that with some either light running, stretching, things going like that start to come in. Keeps you healthy, keeps you ready for the next day. Reduces like a lot of soreness as well that would maybe onset. So again, gets you prepared for the next day. You got to be thinking ahead.
So laying on the floor in a complete starfish position, like for a half hour after a CrossFit workout, isn't good.
Got to get back up and spend 5 more minutes.
That is the predominant way that the cool down for CrossFit. It's like lay down on the floor. A lot of people will do that. You don't see a lot of organized cool down unless they're maybe moving over to an assault bike or something. Which,
That's another form as well. Again, you're slowly starting to bring that heart rate back down. Your blood pressure is going to start to normalize because again, that rapid stop, it actually is a little bit more straining on the heart and the cardiovascular system.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So, in terms of with mobility, stretching, specifically in weightlifting and squatting, it's all about positions, right? It's getting to certain depths, being able to keep an upright torso. Now, anatomy plays a pretty big role in that, where if, torso to femur length will affect how you squat, specifically overhead and things like that. Now, what I'm trying to get to is you see people who have just fantastic mobility, ass to grass, beautiful overhead squat snatch. And then there's people like me whose torso is pitched forward and I got to fight for every inch that I want in the bottom. Now, if I actually gave a shit about mobility and really worked hard on it, which I should, I know I don't, is it possible for anybody to achieve true full range of motion that we see at the highest level? Let's say like true Olympic lifters that have great mobility. If you really spend the time working that like you do training, is that possible, or do people have a limit based on anatomy?
So there will be a limit based on anatomy. There's been even some research studies that'll look at why a certain population or nationality of lifters are better than others.
The Chinese.
And they'll find some differences in hip morphology, meaning like just how large like the femoral head is into the acetabular socket. All those things, which changes some of the angles that they can obtain. They can get a little bit deeper. It does help them. So
right.
there are some genetic predispositions that will kind of set you up, maybe set someone else up to be a little more successful at that like specific move or that specific sport. And you see it across the board too. LeBron James is 6'7". Look at his frame. It's almost unfair. So genetically, but that shouldn't negate or stop you from trying to again improve it, because your lifts and your performance can depend on that. And again, not even just health and overall as you do these compound complex motions, but your overall health and performance can be improved by you continuing to work on those things.
I was being a little facetious, but I totally agree with you on that, especially in the world of weightlifting. Everything is about positions and all that. You look like you have a question. I don't want to keep hogging. You were writing something down. You want to go?
No, I was just making sure we're going over things. I was going to, at some point, I wanted to know if you were going to pick like a couple, let's say strength training movements that you thought you give out or that you tell people to do for strength gains and strength and stuff. Or do you have like a few favorites that you tell people to work on?
Yeah. Let me break it down to upper and lower. Lower body, working the hip abductors, the hip external rotators is huge. There's a lot of good exercises, a lot of research that'll show, like based on like EMG studies, what are some really good exercises to hit glute med, and those things can be built into a warm up. So things like banded side steps, they're great. Standing fire hydrants, great. And then working your way kind of, because they'll lead into helping the femur get a better tracking angle in the hip. They'll help with the knee tracking and knee translation over the ankle. So it's that whole system. And then maybe upper body, gotta work rotator cuff. Can't neglect. Even some static internal, external, or build it into the accessory, where there's some accessory work done at the end, with like crossover symmetry bands, and those are excellent. For working that accessory work, and also doing those moves as like primers before getting into some of those big lifts.
Yeah.
So something like with the crossover symmetry, because I know I'm speaking specifically to the CrossFit population, but my opinion on why a lot of people neglect mobility or injuries are fairly common in CrossFit is because as a CrossFit athlete or whatever, you're required to do so many different things. Like we're spread across so many different modalities that for most people, there's only so much time in the day. So we spoke about stretching with the effective minimum dose to receive gains. Now something with a crossover symmetry or rehab drills, weekly effort. What is the effective minimum dose to stay sound? I know it's going to be a little subjective to the individual, but
yeah, I think working on some accessory work, like individually, 2 to 3 times a week is plenty.
How long? Sets and reps?
It depends on what area you're working. Let's say for like rotator cuff, like working some like internal external rotation, we look for that to be loaded at like 50-60%, like 1 rep max. So it's kind of, think of an intensity. It should be a 5-6 out of 10 intensity as you're working through it. 3 sets of 15 is a great. 3 sets of 20 are great to load them. And like I said, it's just accessory work 2-3 times a week is plenty.
Okay. So we're kind of sitting in that hypertrophy range of light, lower weights, but high volume essentially to get that.
Yeah,
to get that done.
That's what's been recommended from an orthopedic like rehab standpoint, but then also it's been very successful for helping people reintegrate back into overhead lifting and all those complex movements.
This is also a big thing, especially in my years of coaching that I've seen. How important is it for people to snatch an overhead squat? Like, because CrossFit has made that as one of their foundational movements. Like, it's right there with the deadlift and, the clean and all that. But is it really necessary for a person to walk into a gym and learn how to snatch?
Yeah, it has functional carryover as well.
Like what?
When
was the last time you picked something up ground to overhead?
My 2.5-year-old yesterday when he wanted to get thrown up.
Great answer.
Guess where we started from? He was literally on the ground. Dad up. He wants me to throw him up. So we squat down, pick him up.
Ball.
Yeah, it is like a wall ball. But squat down, pick him up, and put him overhead, or even make it more of a wall ball and give him a little air time. So again, just from a fun, playful standpoint, right there, playing with your kids. But I mean, there's carryover into again, overhead lifting, having that development, so you can do a lot of things like that. There was actually a commercial. I think it premiered last Super Bowl. Oh. It was an older gentleman, and he's like in his garage, and he's setting
kettlebell.
He's doing the kettlebell, and he starts doing he gets like a few, and then he's doing the kettlebell, and then he's pressing it up, and like the grand screen, the end of the commercial, his granddaughter's coming over to play, and he's picking her up.
Yeah,
literally just what I described.
Functional fitness.
Exactly. There is absolutely carryover.
That was a good commercial. I thought that was cute. Yeah.
Okay, so they hit the nail on the head with that one. People should learn how to snatch an overhead squat.
Sure.
Okay. But with a PVC in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, a lot of it goes back to, proper training, seeking that good guidance, getting good coaches, good coach to, class ratio, start in PVC, and then, take it from there. Okay.
Do you feel that most injuries that you see are due to overtraining?
Yeah, usually, like I said before, too much, too fast.
Right.
You ramp up. You're excited to start something new. You're doing a lot early on. It's good to feel that soreness from some of these new moves. People get excited to chasing that, delayed onset muscle soreness. But no, then that's when things start to creep in. Usually after a few weeks. And even tendinopathies, they take a little while to build up, and then finally that pain trigger gets kicked, and it's a painful movement. That's when you got to seek out some care. Maybe another thing too is just overall seeking proper guidance as well. Not being afraid to hire a one-on-one coach,
right,
or pay the extra few bucks to do a small group training for more of those private lessons in the beginning, because they may pay off exponentially, especially if you stay in and you don't have any, health issues or injuries come up.
Yeah, that's great. Good
have you dabbled in CrossFit yourself or no?
Not a whole lot, no.
Have you taken a class before?
Yes, I've done a couple of classes.
Okay. And why wasn't it for you?
Not that it wasn't for me. I think I just find
we're not trying to indoctrinate you.
No, it's fine.
Or beat you up.
When it comes to fitness and stuff, I got to chase something. I got to chase a ball in the field, something like that. That's just what's I know I've excelled at that for some of the things that my body's good at, and I wanted to kind of continue that, and because I have so much of a love for that sport, I want to, hopefully pass that on to kids and stuff like that.
Now, when you were playing soccer in your younger years, how regimented or enforced was the weight room in training? Because I know soccer is one of those sports where it's, it's about speed and being lean.
Yep.
It's not necessarily about, obviously you don't want to be bulky, but you do need to be strong. So in your time from when you were in school playing to now, have you seen a transition to the importance of strength training for a sport like soccer? Or is it still not there? Does it need to be there?
I've seen a transition, and it's still not there. Again, growing up, I think our coach would have us in the weight room once or twice in the off season. In preseason. We're not even really accomplishing anything when you reflect back on that. Where we're doing some things one time for 1 week. But now you're starting to see a little bit more, especially with the the clubs and more parochial clubs. They are hiring outside strength and conditioning specialists to come in and work with the team, or the team will go to some of these places off site. And 2-3 times a week, they are deadlifting. They are working on single leg stability. And then just as we can dive into like research for like CrossFit, looking at injuries or looking at like specific things we should work to maintain strength in, and certain areas we should maintain mobility, we can look at those things with research. That stuff is out there now, where we can say, we can take Nordic hamstring curls, or we can take Copenhagen planks and drastically reduce risk of hamstring strains, and adductor planks to drastically reduce like groin related injuries. So we can apply that across the board.
That's great.
But it's still got to get elevated. I had a little bit of a debate with someone a few weeks back actually about it was an article that listed out like why are female ACL injuries higher in girls soccer, and it was listing like Q angle, hormones, shoes that they're wearing, men's cleats, and I'm like, okay, all these things might have a small percent, but like, what about access to weight rooms? What about individual access or team access to some of these strength and conditioning programs? And it's meant to like open our eye. Like they, again, even on a collegiate level, now they're starting to get in like D1 programs. But I have some athletes that come in, during the summer, who are undergoing, surgery, post-op rehab, and just dive in, tell me about your program, tell me about your, what's your structure like in season, out of season, just to generate some conversation. And it also kind of gives me a lot of information on like what they do, what's lacking still in the programs. And unfortunately there's still even some D2, even some D1 programs that just don't have these type of, foundations built in to help these athletes, perform better, but also just prevent injuries as much as we can.
But if the science and the information is there, why are they still stuck in the Stone Ages?
Sometimes finances can come into play. Access to where do you live? Do the club that you play for. Sometimes I'm going to go back to soccer, but sometimes people travel an hour to play with a certain club. Well, that club might train somewhere that's further away. So like, can they even attend those things? And then some of these clubs too are super expensive, and comparatively like overseas, where clubs will pick up players and invest in them and pay for everything. Here over in the US, we have to pay for everything, pay to play, pay to be on the team, pay for travel, pay for the extra, strength and conditioning things that go with it. And it can add up to a lot.
Okay. So you're chalking it up to finance.
Can be one of the variables. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Since we're on sports specific stuff, there's been, I think, a transition and a little bit of debate over the last few years, maybe even longer than that, about eliminating deadlifts, specifically in sports-specific training, and transitioning to power cleans instead, where the argument is that they're a little bit safer and they train more explosive power rather than a deadlift. It's a little bit more practical and translatable to sport, specifically football. What is your opinion on that? Does that make sense? Deadlift's dangerous? Should... kind of like my snatch question, should everybody learn a proper deadlift, or is a power clean a better alternative, still building that strength?
I think as research is coming out and showing that this, like a power clean has a ton of benefits in helping these athletes have higher vertical jumps and all the, higher 10-yard sprints, 20-yard sprint, 40-yard sprints, etc. No, absolutely. Start incorporating them. I don't think it should replace, such a foundational movement like a deadlift that's got, research for years and years and years and years that say, building these helps develop these kind of, movement pattern progressions. But the power cleans, definitely seeing them a lot more in the weight room, because it's I would say newer movement, but like because it's newer to get incorporated.
Sure.
I think the technicality of it and the coaching aspect of it has to be improved as well. Where like you go to a college athlete and you're in a college weight room, they might have a good strength and conditioning coach, that can teach those movements, but sometimes you go off site and they don't have anyone that can kind of teach that movement.
Right.
And that's going to, are you going to really yield good effects, or are you going to actually do more harm on that?
Why do deadlifts get such a bad rap?
I think deadlifts get such a bad rap. Sometimes it's just,
do you agree with that they do?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want a deadlift. That's bad for my back.
Yeah, and I could probably show you a dozen articles, printed in the last year or two that'll show deadlifts should be incorporated into even rehab exercises. There's a cool study that's recently that showed deadlifts comparable to like low load motor control exercises such as like bird dogs, that kind of thing, are equivalent. So, but then there's again, apprehension on doing it. But when you get the right athlete in, and let's say they are rehabbing something that's just happened to their back, as you get that inflammatory process out, getting them back on maybe under a hex bar trap bar deadlift, and just getting some bumper plates, even if they're 10 pounds, can have a nice like psychological component to again help get you start to healing and understand that like you're loading again, you're getting the movement pattern back. But I think, a lot of people do, unfortunately, get that bad rap for the deadlifts because there are some injuries. People do oftentimes, pull their back or report injuries with, doing those moves.
So if I'm kind of thinking about injuries. So if someone has an injury and then they get their MRI, it's decided that they should get surgery. Then they come from the surgery, they come see you. And I know we've talked about this. Sometimes people are like, I'm good after like a couple weeks. Other people are good about everything that you say and stay on with the physical therapy. So do you think, well, I mean, I kind of know the answer to this already, but what is your opinion then of healing and coming back from that injury maybe being better than you were before as an athlete?
Oh, absolutely coming back stronger. It's one of my mottos when I get some people coming in and undergoing surgery is I want you to leave here a better athlete. So it's whether it's that CrossFitter like you were describing that undergoing like maybe a discectomy, something in their low back. Okay, they have to load back up. What can we improve? Let's break down like why did this happen? Is there again some mobility prerequisites that just weren't there? Was it just an overload? Was it a completely aberrant like injury that just happened? And then how do we support them and get them back into being a better version? We get some younger athletes doing a lot of ACL rehab as well, and some of these folks have never even seen a weight room. Sometimes have never lifted a whole lot, but that the process is to leave a better athlete, and understanding some more of the sport demands or the demands of certain lifts. Simulating a lot of that in rehab should be able to accelerate them. Get back on the field, get back in the gym, doing everything at a better version of themselves.
And I guess they have to make the point to be diligent about doing it. Like I'm thinking specifically of one of your MMA athletes who I see all the time, who's so diligent about being there and doing everything, and he's going to be back in the ring.
Diligence and compliance with everything that we set up is big key.
So believing in it and saying,
trusting the process. And sometimes I'll get some of those younger athletes who want to go play D1 somewhere for their sport, and check in. What'd you do over the? Did you get those exercises in over the weekend? Did you do that? And it's like, no, I didn't get a chance. But when it's a repeat of, stuff comes up. But when it's a repeat offender, you kind of start having those talks. You want to, remind them of their goal. You want to play D1, right? This is what we have to do. This is what you have to do. You have to start get into routine of do it. And I'll point down and be like, you see the guy at the end of the table? Yeah, he's fighting the UFC in 3 weeks. He doesn't touch the mat before he does X, Y, Z. Like you got to start looking up to that and finding someone that you can match up with, or maybe one of your idols. And start implementing, a lot of what they do and start taking their like daily routine. I'll have some nutrition talks as well with athletes. Just recently had a couple people come in and they're like, got very faint, pale. I'm like, oh, you gotta get you a fruit snack and a Gatorade quick. And, I had to cease exercises for a little bit as they kind of rebounded. But hey, what'd you have? It's 4:00 in the afternoon. What'd you have for lunch today? What'd you eat last? A bagel at 10:30. It's like, okay, we have to have that fueling talk, and not just fueling themselves for that session, but making sure like protein intake, their macros are on point, so their quad muscle can have the opportunity to grow. You gotta fuel it, you gotta feed it. That diet should really stay the same post-op. If not, maybe make some changes where we get protein content a little bit higher, to enable those muscles to really grow.
That's great. Yeah.
All right, so Deb and I go back and forth on a couple things with recovery methods. I'm going to save the big ticket for last that we might disagree on a little bit, but Theraguns. They're all the rage. You see people, everybody in the gym drilling themselves to death before working out and after working out. What are your thoughts on that? I know I've seen PTs and people use them, and I'm sure that they're more knowledgeable than Joe Schmo in the gym just digging into his hip with it. Like, do they work? Should people be doing that? What is the correct protocol? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the basically percussion therapy.
Yes.
I'm not personally not a fan of them. I think it's just rapidly pounding on skin and muscle over and over. Like it's vibration therapy. It's not. There's not enough research to really support that. I will always defer to more so foam rolling because has been research studies that'll show, okay, foam roll your quads. They'll do like thermal imaging before and after, and you see thermal changes. So it shows, okay, there's a circulatory effect that's actually going on. I don't see those with the Theraguns maybe just yet. But also like, again, you just did a tough CrossFit workout yesterday. You're back in the gym, your quads are sore. That delayed onset muscle soreness is like setting in. To go and have something just repeatedly punch it doesn't add up to me.
Okay.
So that's where I'll defer. But again, some people find benefit from it. They love it.
Right.
It's, those handheld devices, they're very easy. You can have a conversation while you're doing them.
It's so much easier than stretching.
Yeah, exactly.
Or foam rolling.
I don't want to say lazy, but.
Oh, yeah. It's lazy. Let's call it that.
But again, those devices, $300, $200, $300 maybe.
The good ones are $300.
I know you can get some cheaper ones online, but man, a good foam roll costs you $10.
All right,
and both are portable, both are travelable. So that's where I'll defer on that one until further research comes out that can that's maybe third party that can sway me.
What about the Nordic boots?
Oh, compression therapy is awesome. Yeah, the Normatechs are awesome. I mean that it's utilized in hospitals post op. More so on like the cat. Like that's where it kind of basically started. We find the most benefit like immediately post workout. When, like I said before, like lactic acid is like truly present in the bloodstream, so you can kind of still help with the circulatory effect. So you do your cool downs, right? And then you hop on that boots. Again, just kind of push or circulate everything a little bit more. They're very relaxing too. And even just having the compression like on it, it also feels like a little bit more of like a massage. Definitely more therapeutic and relaxing than like the Theraguns.
What about the muscle stims? They're not as popular as they once were, like the compacts where you put the electrodes on your muscles. And beneficial, not worth it?
Not worth it.
Okay.
No, especially some of the home units. The home units are so low dosage because they got to be safe.
Sure.
So the company doesn't get sued. There's some of the Compex products I've seen out there, and I'll see them across with a lot of CrossFit athletes using them, and post workout the advertisement and you see their shoulder just completely like go. I think it's a little more that's definitely like misuse. That's not how it's meant to go. Like if you're utilizing stim, and the best way stim gets utilized is really as like a more of a neurologic pathway where it's just kind of calm the nervous system. Doesn't really change circulation in the area. So when you're plugging it on and you just did a workout and then you're plugging that on and, forcing the muscle to contract at a higher rate, I think you're fatiguing it even a little bit more. So is it accelerated recovery or are you actually just fatiguing that muscle a little bit more? So, but again, post, workout soreness, some people live by, and I can't refute, where they report feeling excellent with, using some at-home stim units. Absolutely, go for it.
I mean, they're even using them while training. Like their stim style. I used to have a Compax back in the day, and you can program it to do certain, like put it on your quads as you do a body weight squat and now I know there's even bigger machines in specific gyms, which I think it's all, hoax, but where they hook you up to stim as you're training.
Yeah, no, ARP Neuro is one of them. I've been highly looking at actually maybe getting that into like the clinic, just doing some more research on it. But again, what that uses is a very specialized wavelength.
Okay.
That, again, just stimulates the brain in certain ways, helps the muscle, like it blocks the pain signal, but it also helps stimulate the muscle to contract. So again, someone who has like a quad injury, or even just a quad contusion, can put this on and start doing lunges with a lot less pain, but still getting some load as well.
But that's different than the Compex version that is readily available.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody who's putting that on them and doing air squats, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
This is what I want to hear. This is the good stuff.
I'm more of I'm research based. I'm science based.
Right.
So again, you find those third parties that are not Compex putting this info out that says, that you find these changes comparatively to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'll adopt it. And again, you need more than one. You need a few of these studies to like actually change our way of practice.
Right. Okay. I'm going to tiptoe my way in. We're almost at the big one. Cryo.
Yeah, cryo's great. That's something actually we have on site. I definitely recommend looking up Susan Soberg. She's
it's great.
PhD research. I think she's out of Norway.
Yeah.
She's come up with the 11-minute cryo minimum, or the cold exposure. So it's 11 minutes a week of cold exposure is what induces the physiologic effects of circulatory effects, brown fat, all those other things. But it's a rapid chilling, 2-3 minutes. And you get all that peripheral, again, on the peripheral and your extremities, all that blood kind of gets pushed back to the, centrally. Once you get out, you get actually a higher amount of vasodilation. So there's blood flow, like a greater increase in blood flow. So there's actually even now some research putting into doing it before workouts, as a kind of like a little analgesic, soreness reducer if you're sore from the day before, but then getting a little more vasodilation pre-lifting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Red light
therapy is used a lot in combination. They'll build it into like a lot of saunas now too, actually. The red light saunas, the infrared saunas. They'll get built in. It's a certain wavelength of light that just penetrates much deeper, kind of stimulates certain parts of the cells that help, motility and movement. So overall goal, increase circulation. I think both of those are, again, they do similar things, but they're different. Some people then, you got to go back to subjectively. Does someone just absolutely hate the cold? Okay, then cryo's not for them. You can look to utilize them with the infrared sauna or the red light sauna. Or does someone, love the cold exposure, and then that's your go-to.
So Deb's wall of red lights upstairs, not a waste?
No, not a waste.
It's not a wall of red lights.
Well, I know sauna, like an actual sauna, that's proven, that's been around forever. It makes sense. Now the big one, and whenever something becomes very oversaturated and very popular, I become skeptical, because then I look at it as that people are just trying to cash in on the trend, and ice baths. Now, I understand from an athletic point of view the benefit of doing it, like when you see CrossFitters jumping in tubs, or football players, whatever. We're preventing the inflammation process, the inflammatory process from happening, so that we can go back the next day and compete with minimal lactic acid. Is that the correct theory?
That's the correct theory
behind that.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless you're an athlete and you have to compete, that principle does not apply to most people. It would be actually non-beneficial for a regular person to go into cold post-training, because they're preventing the healing process from happening, correct? And they actually don't see the gains from training.
That's some of the newer research now.
Right.
Yeah. The cold exposure, cryo, cold tubs, they're going to even just ice pack post workouts. They're all going to fall into the same thing, where the goal was to reduce inflammation, slow down the metabolism in the area. And now we're kind of saying, well, when we're working out, we're technically breaking down our muscles. We want that inflammatory process where we do, again, I think they think we accelerate to keep that healing. But again, we can also go back to subjective reports. You can't deny the analgesic pain relieving effects that cryo has as well. But yeah, there's again some more controversial research now,
because we were talking about this before you came. The Rice guy reneged his theory, didn't he?
Yeah.
And what was the reasoning behind that? That he actually took a step back?
Yeah, that the cold therapy actually inhibits the healing process. But
What's
again,
his new formula though? Didn't he come out with a new formula?
there's a couple new acronyms. Everyone just wants to get famous.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's more so about promoting just active movement. So again, you wake up that next day and you are sore, like just getting going, walking will absolutely just start to reduce that.
Okay.
And then even like some of the elite soccer program teams across the world, you see it in the World Cup, Women's World Cup right now. Like you'll see like post workouts, it's like they're jumping in ice baths and you're like, oh, well, we just had a couple research things that say don't do that. But again, there's even some camaraderie components, some mental components that go into it where you can, challenge yourself, stay in the full 2 minutes, that kind of thing, push yourself, as again, more of just like a mental toughness.
So I'll let Deb go over her routine, and then I want you to debunk it and tell her that she's wasting her time. No, I'm kidding.
It's not happening.
But Deb, you talk through your process and the why you do it and the way you do it, and then...
As far as the cold tub, maybe?
Yeah, because you're not doing it in the way that I just discussed. You're doing it for a different way and different purpose, so...
Yeah, I mean, I do it in the morning before I have my coffee. I just, and we never figured out what that term was that I was trying to figure out. That leaves.
Which term?
That leaves your body. The.
Well,
anyway.
There's some bodily chemical that through cold therapy is no longer present in the morning when you do it.
Well, once you do cold therapy, it's out. Like before you drink your coffee, there's that whole doctor online that's talking about how before you put caffeine in your system, you need to have at least an hour of being awake and moving around. But I can get out of bed, put on a bathing suit, come down, get in that cold tub, and it takes care of it right like within 5 minutes, and then I can have my coffee after. But for me, the reason I started doing it was because I read, I think that woman that you mentioned, I talked about, and Rhonda Patrick, I think online, talked about the benefits of it for mood boosting, for mental health. And I was very intrigued by that. And I think I stay in for 5 minutes, and I was saying to him that I don't even feel, like I barely feel cold anymore. It's not that.
Epinephrine, is that?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's been beneficial for me, just thinking like, okay, I survived that and it was fine, and I'm very productive after it, and I feel really good mentally. So, and actually this morning felt very sore, and after I did it, my body felt better. And in my opinion, research can come out and it could say this or that, and it could be even negative. I still know what I feel individually, so that's all that really matters to me. I like the research to go along with what I say or what I feel, but sometimes it's not going to. There's going to be different things that come up and people that don't believe in it. But I think it's great.
Awesome, yeah. And it's also a lot of people. I don't want to say fad, but where people are doing it first thing in the morning or they wake up, it's more of like they want to replace that morning grogginess. They're looking for more of, I'm going to build structure, I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna get right in, it's gonna absolutely wake me up, and then I'm gonna start my day, I'm gonna go to the gym, whatever, XYZ after. So it's also helping people kind of stay accountable and kind of keeping a good structure for their day and kind of morning routine.
Yeah.
I believe in all that. Like, that's where I see the benefit from, because if you can sit in an ice bath for 5 minutes right when you wake up, everything for the rest of the day is going to feel easy. Like, that's smooth. I'm just always skeptical whenever people say it's like the next big thing, because I've hopped on so many next big things bandwagons in the past, and none of it was actually the next big thing. I'm still the same average individual I was before it. So, I'm that's why I get a little skeptical about things like that. And do they move the needle? I believe those things move the needle, but at what point on the spectrum are they moving the needle? Like, are they moving the needle for the 0.001% because of how fit they are, that is the difference maker? When if you take average Joe who's not doing the things that we discussed about earlier, but they think the cold plunge is the secret to all their problems, well, that's probably not the case.
Right. It's some people are going to have more benefit. Like you get your professional athletes, they're going to do it routinely and religiously.
Right.
That's part of their just weekly, bi-weekly kind of thing that they're going to do. because they want to keep that. They need that 1% to keep them on edge, to keep them competing, or to have that 1% edge over their opponent. That's what everyone's always looking for.
Right.
Yeah, when you get your average adult just looking at, work out, do those kind of things, can it accelerate? It might even have a greater effect because, like you said, we touched on before, like they're not in peak physical form like some of these professional athletes are. So it may be helping them, using these modalities might be helping them a lot more as well.
I found it. So at the cellular level, caffeine blocks the action of a chemical called phosphodiesterase, PDE it's called. So inside your cells, PDE breaks down the second chemical messenger, cyclic adenosine monophosphate. So until that...
For us normal folks, what does that mean?
So what that's saying is that has to break down before, or caffeine is going to block it, and it's going to help you to almost with the coming out of your morning, what's that called? The cycle of, going to sleep at night and waking up, that whole cycle. Circadian rhythm, yeah. It's going to be normalized if you wait on the caffeine because it's going to be blocked in the morning with that. So doing something like cold tub will take that out.
Listen, this is why I'm so scarred and damaged. Because when Frazier started releasing all his secrets and beta-alanine was the hot thing and you couldn't even find it because he was like, yeah, it's like I have a third lung. I was eating pounds of beta-alanine and all I had to do was go to the bathroom. But it comes out that, are those supplements effective, or are these tactics effective because of how fit they are? And that is why that is the needle mover, where most people just aren't prioritizing mobility, foam rolling, nutrition, sleep, hydration, that we skip all those things that we know are effective for the big cool trends. And that my thing is always that unless you have all your ducks in the row, there's no point in doing something like that.
Yeah, got to tackle the basics first.
Right.
Again, overall health, how are your joints, how's your muscle flexibility, all that kind of overall health. And we'll look at that as for our athletes that come in too. Like head to toe, everything in between, a whole body approach, and then how's their sleep, especially if they're like a younger high school kind of athlete. How's your sleep quality? How many hours you getting? Because even looking back at youth athletes who get less than 8 hours, 1.7 times more likely to have an overuse injury. So almost twice as likely to have an overuse injury simply just because they're not getting that full 8 hours. Wow. Nutrition we'll touch on. Again, when you get all that stuff formulated, and if that is completely taken care of and you have that in a row, then then you want some more supplements or those accessory kind of things. That's then the time to put those in. Yeah. But you will never you gotta get the foundation work done first.
Right. So that being said, what are your top, let's say 3 to 5 things that you recommend to people that you feel are irreplaceable and you can't put a price on, that if your purpose is wellness, health, fitness, to stay healthy and fit and have a long career, let's call it, what are the things you recommend that people should do? Your hierarchy.
We always when I get someone come in, chronic cramping, chronic tightness, joint stiffness, all that kind of thing, talk to me about your diet. So we'll talk about just overall nutrition, just to get a general sense of where they're at, and then I'll kind of my hierarchy. I'll touch on how's your hydration levels? Are you hitting, especially if they're someone who's training often, I'll give them a recommendation of an easy goal of, look, half your body weight in ounces you should be taking in. Again, you're still having, because again, I can do what we need to do on in the room and the table and exercise and stuff like that. But on a cellular level, we have to start tackling some things. So hydration, making sure sodium intake is adequate. If we need someone to get a blood test, or if you think it's warranted, or if someone just hasn't had a recent physical and blood test, might say, hey, why don't you go get a few things checked out with your primary, and again, we can look over the results as well, make sure all the kind of stuff on a cellular level is taken care of. Magnesium citrate is a great form and something I'll recommend often for people who chronic cramps, chronic tightness, to and it's also like difficulty like sleeping and staying asleep, or night cramps even often. Magnesium is, out of the 4 ions, basically the muscle regulator. So it acts as a natural muscle relaxer. We look at we find that even in like our dark leafy green veggies, spinach, kale, broccoli. But then there's even some studies out there now that look at, like, because we farm stuff and harvest it so quick, it's actually not as much, that the levels aren't as high
Depleted,
as we expect. The soil is actually depleted. Again, you can go down a little rabbit hole,
There's
stuff
so
like that.
much, Sure.
But it's interesting to think about. So when we find those people, again, magnesium citrate supplements, awesome. For athletes, creatine, again, over and over, again, it gets kind of demonized. And some people look at it as a negative effect, but no, it's
what's the negative? I've never heard of anything negative about creatine.
It's sometimes the connotation, because I think who uses it mostly was like, football players, and people were getting overweight, and they're blaming it on creatine. Like, it's not safe.
I know the rumors, but like the actual science, there's nothing negative to it.
Nothing negative to it. Nope. As long as you're if your body naturally produces it.
Right.
So to give a little bit extra to support muscle strengthening and hypertrophy, research is there. And then you can look up, depending on your age and body weight and all that kind of stuff.
Women just as much as men.
You can find your right dosage.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole thing, because one of the most common things is creatine is going to make me blow, it's going to make me blah, blah, blah. But isn't the water that is being retained on a cellular level? It is not on a composition level. So that whole belief that you are bloated and bulky is actually false. If your weight does increase from creatine, it's because cellularly we're holding more water.
Yep. I had someone not too long ago, and it was a baseball player. He was looking on he was a pitcher. He was looking on increase his overall just mass, so he can overall increase his velocity. He started supplement with creatine, and he also started intaking, I think, like 1,500 more calories a day.
It's not that though.
So again, of course, the talk though, my weight's gone up. I feel like I lost some definition, and I think it's the creatine, and it's like, the workload might not be matching up to 1,500 calories. So go back to the drawing board with your coach, your nutritionist, and just bring this kind of stuff up to him. That's their expertise. I can just kind of guide them.
Anything else on your list?
I mean, definitely. For him.
Yeah. Your list of the...
Oh, no, those will be the top 4s of topics I'll have in conversations with clients, and anything beyond that, if it's someone who needs a referral, go see your PCP, look at blood tests and things like that, and then they can take it over from there.
What about fish oils, joint supplements, glucosamine,
chondroitin?
Yeah, that so fish oil is one of those hot topics right now, where some people say like the oceans are so polluted, most of the oils that you're getting are actually not good. You have to be very careful about who you get it from these days. But do any of those joint supplements work, or the supplements that say they'll improve your mobility and your joint flexibility and things like that?
I'll go back. I'll actually add some fish oils in the omega 6 fatty acid. Which ones are in fish? Omega 3s.
Omega 3s.
Again, those are good because those have good research that support, that they help out cardiovascular issues and can. But the other one was, what was the other one you just
said? Yeah, glucosamine,
chondroitin. Yeah, a lot of people turn to that as that's what they have to do to fix their knee arthritis,
right?
And you can try a dose. You got to do it for like take a dose 2-3 months consistently. Combine glucosamine with chondroitin. There's greater benefit. But if you're not seeing a big change, it's kind of it's recommended to just discontinue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not necessarily a staple, not like
no. Again,
in the stack.
No, it's a we'll touch on it. I'll talk about with some patients with it because we get asked that often, because that's over the counter, something that you can just say yes, and then this is the recommendation. This is what they say. Do it for 2 months. Combine it with chondroitin. If you don't see any major benefit, it's kind of all right. Just discontinue. It's not gonna do anything. And then that's where if someone has a good true knee arthritis or a knee issue, it's okay. Then you can, again, rehab's not helping them. Those supplements arenn't helping them on a cellular level. Okay, we could go back to the doctor. Let's go back to the drawing board. And then there's some other great alternatives out there that are, again, non-invasive. They're not like you have to go right to surgery. There's a lot of alternatives out there.
I mean, we've gone down a supplement rabbit hole, and you seem very informed, so I'm going to keep going.
Sure, I'll try.
BP 157.
Not from peptide, right? Ah, okay, yeah. I have had actually over the last few weeks specifically some more people asking me about that. Not familiar with it. Not familiar. One of the athletes was UFC, so I definitely know. I don't think it's USADA.
It's not an illegal substance.
It's not illegal.
I don't believe, maybe by WADA.
Yeah. So like, I wasn't sure. So again, I got to ditch that back to them and say, you and your, Asian guy to look over this type of supplements, to make sure you're not taking something
that's
that
a
is
good
banned.
question. I don't know if it is banned,
but I thought I looked up and it wasn't approved for USADA.
Right.
So it's not banned, but it's
because it's still very experimental at this
exactly.
point in time. It's in the gray area.
I did have someone who got it and did a shot for a tennis elbow, and he claims it helped him a lot, but
okay,
wasn't necessarily all the rehab we just did for 2-3 weeks.
Right. What is your familiarity with L-carnitine? Because there's been a lot of hype about that lately too, specifically injectable L-carnitine.
Not familiar. No.
Okay.
You tell me.
So they say L-carnitine helps you use more of the glucose that's readily available in your muscles. And the study or the research shows now that orally, the amounts that you would have to take are in abundance. Like, it's a sickening amount that you'd be sitting there shoving powder in your mouth all day long for minimal effect. But the only way that it actually does do something is through it being injectable.
Okay.
Haven't heard this yet?
No.
Okay.
Do you know what foods it might be found in?
You can carnitine's in steak and red meat and all that.
Why can't we just eat? Why do we have to?
You deal with athletes.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get the questions.
And
that's sometimes the same questions back. Like, why do you need to supplement like something that you're injecting? And for a faster delivery, or like, I already take in enough calories. I get that, and that's something maybe to explore. But no, for general population, if you can find what these things are, what foods these certain supplements are in, or what you can eat to just boost those levels,
right,
that's all you need to do.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, no, I know everyone wants the quick fix, and
hence why Ozempic is busting out of the seams right now, because semaglutide is all the rage, where people just want to get thin by taking a shot.
Got it. Yep.
Have you heard about that too?
Not familiar.
Oh, that's all the rage right now. Where there's like people are having extreme weight loss just through the shot.
The quick fix.
Yeah. But of course now there's research coming out that there could be cancer.
Yeah, and what's the long-term effect?
Yeah,
so again,
we don't know.
Do you want to be the guinea pig, or do you want to maybe wait? Is it that for the L-carnitine like you were just talking about? You got to just weigh it out. For your average person, like, is it that, or even like an amateur athlete trying to make it professionally? Like, there's so many other things you got to check off the list before like you should even consider like having to inject something that should accelerate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when there's money and fame and everything on the line, nobody gives a shit about that.
Careers on the line, especially, talk about some NFL athletes. I know some of the things that get taken.
Sure.
Personally, from just treating a few of them, when it's off season or right when they take a drug test, they can go on something.
Right.
Because, low chance of getting retested. But, anything that can help accelerate, because they think, man, I got average NFL career is like less than 3 years. So they have to maximize that few years as much as they can.
Is it still as bad as it once was with doping them up on game day and all that?
No,
become a little more regulated.
I'm sure behind the scenes there's a lot more shots that go on. Cortisone, a lot more shots that go on than you realize though.
Oh, it's actually funny that you just mentioned that. I hear from so many people who are dealing with some arthritis, injuries, whatever. Oh, I just got a cortisone shot. I'm fine. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Right timing. It may not be necessarily the first line, and if you go to a lot of really good orthopedists right now, won't even do that unless you're in like severe pain and you just need something to knock out some inflammation. But they'll actually even turn to like more an oral steroid, again, just to knock down some inflammation. But most of the time it's referred for conservative care, get to PT, just get it under control, figure out, why it happened. But I'll personally, also consider referring patients for something like that. If get someone coming in, man, this 6 month, they had a shoulder tendonitis for 6 months and it's just tough to break through, and just can't get them to like the next level to kind of get back into sport. They've had a relatively clean MRI kind of thing. So, all right, let's look back, and I'll send them back, and maybe they can do a cortisone or an anti-inflammatory to just kind of break us through that barrier, that's little wall that we're at, and so we're not plateaued and kind of get through.
Right.
So no, it can be helpful, and that's where I think it's most beneficial, as like a little bit of a boost. Just knock down that wall, and we can keep rolling with some rehab.
It's not like the doped up racehorse effect where you feel so good that you can do damage after it. Is it actually curing something, or is it just allowing you to move pain-free?
It's a steroid that's just going to reduce inflammation. So let's say if you're having shoulder impingement and you can't lift your arm up above shoulder height, it's just going to reduce the inflammation that's in that joint space, so you can do it. But you got to fix the underlying issues, or that same recipe is going to come right back.
Yeah.
Cortisone, it seems to work, a third of the time, so it's not even super effective.
Okay.
But it's it's insurance companies cover it. It's relatively a little more inexpensive versus alternatives like PRP, platelet-rich plasma injections. A lot of times insurances aren't covering that, but it's coming out to be very, very, very beneficial for a lot of regenerative type medicine and relatively conservative, and even stem cell BMAC in aspirations that'll BMAC bone marrow aspiration concentrated. They'll inject it right back into sites, and that definitely promotes some healing.
Okay. Deb, do you have anything that comes to mind?
No, I was going to ask if cortisone, you shouldn't have that more than...
They limit, I think, 3 a year.
And
long-term corticosteroid use can degrade tendons.
That's okay.
So again, if you're using it on a chronic shoulder issue or a chronic like Achilles issue, you can do more harm on the tendons.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that's where the limit comes in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think a great way to close this out, because it's been a while and you've been excellent and answered a lot of questions, is what has been the most rewarding or gratifying moment in your PT career?
I think a big part of why I love doing what I'm doing is always helping someone kind of get to that next level. A couple recent stories, even helping a UFC athlete work his way, get back into the octagon and actually get back on national television, and work on his next contract. All that kind of stuff is it's big. You got to understand that side. But even just helping someone again get to that next level, like I said before, leave a better athlete. I just had a local guy. He's a pitcher. Had a couple injury-prone freshman year, sophomore year at college, and then he's like, I'm going to enter the transfer portal, and he went up to a D1 program and got a scholarship offer. And then he actually I was driving home from work late one night, and he called me, and I was like, what's up? And he's like, I just want to let you know, I committed, I got a scholarship, and I was like, that's awesome that I made that list that he didn't even get home yet. I'm like, you could just wait to tell me in the clinic, but he had to call me, and he's like, no, I was super appreciative of everything. So getting that story like that, that's just, all right, man, I'm super motivated to get back to work the next day. And who is the next person we can help and make that next story as well.
That's
very
great.
cool.
Great.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think I'm good.
Brian, what about you?
No, appreciate you
All right,
having me on.
now's your time to do your plug. Anything you want to share where people can find you?
Yeah. I currently work at Edge Pro Physical Therapy. We're in Paramus, New Jersey. Director of clinical director there, director of sport and orthopedic rehab. And then I think it's just super important for anyone, any athlete, and especially any CrossFitters who are working or watching this. Find yourself a good sports PT, even a good sports chiro that you can link up with. So you can work on these things. You can stay healthy. The goal is to stay healthy in training, reach that goal, reach your next level. So I think linking up with someone who can, who understands the requirements of the sports or the lift, can actually, benefit you in terms of helping your performance.
All right.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you for listening. You can find me on Instagram, BlakeV94. Deb is What's Deb Up To, and then Resolve Nutrition and Training. There is an underscore in between every word. I think that's an easier way to say it. We got to do something about that handle. Subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't done so already. You can do that on our website, and we look to see you all soon.